All right, let's talk about something we all love to hate, the pop-up. You know, that thing that's probably the most dismissed, most annoying, and yet somehow one of the most powerful tools on the entire internet. We all have that knee-jerk reaction to just smash that close button. But what if we could flip that script? Today, we're going to break down how to turn this digital pest into an absolute powerhouse asset.
Okay, let's start with a number, and it's a big one, a really painful one, 70 to 80%. That is the percentage of people who see an intrusive pop-up and dismiss it, instantly, no hesitation. I mean, that's a massive rejection rate, and it tells us one thing loud and clear. The old way of doing pop-ups, it's just completely broken.
Which, of course, brings us to the big question, right? How in the world do you design a pop-up that dodges that instant dismissal? How do you create something that people not only tolerate, but might actually engage with? Well, the answer isn't just guesswork or luck.
Turns out, there's a formula, a really powerful psychology-backed framework that can predict and influence user behavior with some pretty incredible accuracy. Okay, you ready? Let's dive into this.
This right here, this is the Fogg behavior model, and it was developed by a Stanford researcher named B.J. Fogg. And it's so elegant because it's so simple. For any behavior, which is the B, to actually happen, three things have to all come together at the exact same moment. You need motivation, M, you need ability, A, and you need a prompt, P. B equals M plus A plus P.
The easiest way to wrap your head around this is to think of it like a recipe. You need all three ingredients for the cake to bake, right? You could have all the motivation in the world, but if the task is too hard, it's not going to happen. An easy task won't get done if there's nothing to trigger you to do it, and a trigger or a prompt is totally useless if you have zero motivation. So when we're designing a pop-up, what we're really designing for is that exact moment of convergence.
So let's break this recipe down ingredient by ingredient. First up, motivation. This is all about cranking up the user's desire to take action. And look, it's not about creating motivation out of thin air. It's about finding the motivation they already have and just amplifying it.
So how do you do that? Well, you tap into these core human drivers that we all have. Things like reciprocity. You know that feeling that you want to return a favor? Or loss aversion, that powerful fear of missing out on something. And of course, social proof, our natural tendency to follow what other people are doing. These are the psychological levers that we can pull.
And this quote, this is a perfect example of how to talk directly to that motivation. This copy is from an invoicing software called Wave, and you'll notice it doesn't talk about its features. It talks about the user's biggest, most important goal, getting paid faster. It immediately answers that silent question every user has. Yeah, but what's in it for me?
You see how this just completely reframes the entire conversation? Most companies talk about features. They say, we have X, Y, and Z. But great copy focuses on the benefits. It says, with our product, you will achieve A, B, and C. One is all about the product. The other is all about the user's life. And trust me, the difference in engagement is just massive.
Okay, so let's move on to ingredient number 2 and see how this all connects. Ability. And this isn't about how skilled your user is, it's all about how simple the task is. The easier you can make the action, the more likely it is that they'll actually do it. And this is maybe one of the most crucial insights from the whole Fogg model. Motivation and ability have this inverse relationship. Think about it. If you want to convince someone to do something really hard, like, say, climb a mountain, they're going to need a ton of motivation. But if you make the action incredibly simple, like one single click, they only need a tiny little spark of motivation to get it done. So how do we make things effortless? It really boils down to 3 super simple rules. First, have a single, clear goal. Don't ask for 5 different things in your pop-up, just ask for one. Second, make that call to action, the CTA button, blindingly obvious. No one should have to hunt for it. And third, make sure closing the pop-up is just as easy and intuitive. Don't ever trap your users. It's the worst.
And you gotta remember, ability isn't just one single thing. It's actually a mix of a few different factors. You have to ask, how much time will this take? How much mental effort, or what we call cognitive load, is required? And especially on mobile, how much physical effort does it take to actually tap that button? Our job as designers is to minimize the friction in all of these areas.
And that brings us to our final crucial ingredient, the prompt. See, the pop-up itself is the prompt. It's the trigger. It's the little nudge that says, hey, do this thing now. But a prompt only works if motivation and ability are already high.
So its success really comes down to one thing: timing.
Now, not all prompts are created equal, right? You've got different types. A modal, that's the big one that takes over your screen. It's super intrusive, so you should only use it for absolutely critical actions. Then there's the banner, which is way more of a subtle nudge. And an interstitial is a full screen message that works best during natural pauses, like after you finish a level in a game. Choosing the right format is absolutely key.
And timing is literally everything. Just look at this data here. Pop-ups that show up in the first few seconds, they have sky-high dismissal rates. Everybody hates them. But when you wait 30 seconds or more, when you actually let the user get engaged first, that rejection rate just plummets. A little bit of patience pays off big time.
So here's the real secret sauce, the big takeaway from all this. The best prompts aren't just based on a timer. They're triggered by context. Think about it. Did a user just scroll 70% of the way down an article? That is a fantastic time to ask for a subscription. Did they just use a specific feature for the 5th time? That's the perfect moment to ask them for feedback. Context is what makes a prompt feel helpful instead of just jarring and annoying.
Okay, so we have our formula: motivation, ability, and a well-timed prompt. Now let's put it all together into a really clear, actionable checklist for creating pop-ups that people don't just tolerate, but that they might actually welcome.
All right, here we go. Here are the do's. Do: personalize the content based on what that user is actually doing. Do: offer real value first before you ask for anything in return. Do: cap the frequency so you're not bombarding people. And for goodness sakes, do make dismissing it super easy and intuitive. And now for the flip side, the absolute deal breakers, the things you should never, ever do. Don't interrupt critical user flows, like when someone is trying to check out and give you money. Don't use manipulative, guilt-tripping copy. And please, don't hide the close button. These tactics don't just get your pop-up ignored, they build genuine, long-lasting resentment for your brand. So I want to leave you with this final thought, a kind of shift in perspective. What if a pop-up wasn't an interruption at all? What happens when you combine the right motivation with an effortless action and a perfectly timed prompt? The pop-up stops being an ad. It actually becomes a feature. It transforms from an annoyance into a helpful, context-aware guide that makes the user's experience better. And that is the paradox and the incredible power of a pop-up done right.